Welcome to this edition of On Deck with Mercury. My name is Mercury Payton. I'm the town manager of Vienna here. And October is National Community Planning Month. And there's a whole lot of planning going on here in the town of Vienna. It ties really nicely with the town comprehensive plan, which is currently being updated. And so for that reason, to my right, is a good friend of mine, David Levy. He is the Director of Planning and Zoning. Hi, David. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us and all the people to talk about the comprehensive plan.
Happy to do it.
Excellent, excellent. So please share with us what's going on with the number of projects that are being proposed that are getting plenty of buzz around town these days. And maybe talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan and remind us how it all ties together.
Sure. Would you mind if I did a little thing on National Community Planning Month to start?
Absolutely.
Yes, so National Community Planning Month. So for those who don't know, there is a thing called the American Planning Association. And many of us planners are members of that, and you can get certification, professionally certified, as I am and as many of the staff are. It is a national declaration that recognizes the great work that communities do, that volunteers do, that elected officials do, and staff to help communities envision their future and make their communities what they wish it to be.
Right.
And so last night, the mayor and council declared it the National Community Planning Month in Vienna. And that was a great thing, and recognized the importance of the community working together to chart the community's future.
That's excellent. And when we talk about planning, maybe just for a few minutes, let's talk about what planning is and zoning and just how communities interlock with each other, where you have the business district and residential and parks and industrial zones.
Sure.
Maybe talk just maybe a little bit so people can understand what the purpose is of planning and what it is.
That's great, thank you. So I'll break it into two big categories, okay? One kind of planning is the type of planning where you're envisioning the future. So you're saying what I was talking about before, let's get together and decide where are the residential areas of the community? Where are the commercial areas of the community? Where should the parks be? What kind of community facilities do we need or do we want? What should the infrastructure be? Planning departments don't have all those skills. We have some of them, but what planners do is they link. They work with our friends in Public Works, our friends in Parks and Recreation, and together we say, okay, here is how these things could interact. If the community is growing in population, how much more do you need? Bigger communities like Fairfax County would say, how many more schools would we need if we have this much population growth? So planning in its comprehensive sense, in that way, is trying to get all the pieces to link together so that the community can meet all of the things that you want it to happen as you move forward into the future.
Right.
So that's kind of forward-thinking planning, which some people call long-range or comprehensive planning. It's the other kind of planning, which is once you have that plan, once you have the zoning, which are the rules that implement your vision, people present a project.
Sure.
They'll apply, and planners will review the project to make sure that it's consistent with the zoning rules, with the comprehensive plan. And so people call that development review,
right,
or current planning. So first you envision, then you put the regulations together, and then people apply, and you see, oh, does this application for a development meet what the community said is its vision and the rules that have been put in place? So that's kind of the world of planning.
Right.
One additional component is that in our department, we also have zoning enforcement officers.
Sure.
So we make sure that people actually do what they say in the field.
Right.
When you say you're going to build this, when you have your home like this, when you have your business like this, are you following the rules?
Right.
So those are kind of the pieces of planning that you see in every community.
Sure. And terms like walkability and
Right.
terms like infrastructure and
Yes.
support for all the apparatus that people are going
Right.
to use and enjoy. That all plays a role in that.
Absolutely. So the comprehensive plan might lay out a vision. We want to have a walkable community. We want to have sidewalks all over. That might be in a particular chapter, the transportation chapter of the comprehensive plan. We want to have sidewalks everywhere, and then that's put into regulations. Somebody applies to do a development project, and we say, okay, one of the requirements is you build a sidewalk. And so that's how that plays out. So the vision gets turned, or the capital improvements program of Public Works or Parks and Recreation, they'll do a project. They'll say, we're going to build sidewalks here because that's the vision from the comprehensive plan as it's implemented in the infrastructure plans that each of them have.
Right.
So the comprehensive plan links all these things together.
Right. And so with all that we're talking about here and what you do on a daily basis, working with all these different departments and developers and residential homeowners and such, why is the town working on a comprehensive plan now?
So the state of Virginia requires that the comprehensive plan of each jurisdiction, of each town, city, county, gets reviewed every 5 years to determine whether it should be updated.
Right.
Okay? So the last time the town adopted its comprehensive plan was 2016. Okay? 5 years later, the town looked at the comprehensive plan and said, you know what, this is not quite the right moment because we're in the middle of updating our zoning ordinance. Mm-hmm. Why don't we defer that? So it looked and said, no, this isn't the moment. Let's wait till we're finished with the zoning ordinance. Then we'll come back and do the review and updating.
Right.
So we're meeting a state requirement is number one reason we're doing it. Number two, though, it's just a good idea for a community not to say, oh, we did a plan. That's already in place.
Right.
Because things change.
Sure.
Visions change. Things around us change.
Sure.
Even if we don't change that much, factors change.
Sure.
Pandemics happen. We don't have the MAC anymore, Maple Avenue corridor. Things just change.
Right.
And so you look at your plan to say, does this plan still match the vision of the town, or should we evolve it?
Right. It makes sense because, if you do a plan once and then it's 10, 20, 50 years since you've looked at it, well, a lot of communities change, a lot of owners of businesses turn over, and there's development and new roads and new infrastructure.
Yeah, right.
And so one would think that instead of being reactive to what's around you, maybe every 5 years gives a community an opportunity to maybe forecast or plan and say, we'd like to be this in 10 years.
That's right. And that's a really good point, because every 5 years you're asking yourself the question, is the current vision for the next 10 to 20 years still valid? So every 5 years you say, how's our vision for the next 10 to 20 years now? And then 5 years later, how's our vision for 10 to 20 years now? So each time you're doing that.
Right. So where's the town in the process now?
Yeah, good. So we held a big public kickoff meeting this past spring. We've had people sending us comments, members of the public. We are now working with the Planning Commission. By state law and practice and good policy, the town's Planning Commission takes the first cut, working with staff, with public input. Every board and commission in town has been asked to give their input on the comp plan. We've asked the general public to give their input. Relevant departments have all put together their input. We are now assembling all that information for the Planning Commission to work with staff to start to develop a draft based on all that input. So that's where we are right now. We've got the input, we're assembling it, and the Planning Commission will be starting to meet in subcommittees to start to work on components.
Sure.
They've already worked on them, but now they're starting again with all the input.
Right, right. So now, talk about the public engagement and
Sure.
the feedback.
Sure.
Where are there opportunities for residents to do that?
Excellent. I mean, in the end, a comprehensive plan is for the community.
Right.
It's not for a commission, it's not for the staff, it's for the community. So it means nothing if it doesn't match what the community's vision
Right.
is. So once all the input's been given, a first cut draft is assembled, we'll bring that out to the public for a public meeting, not in a public hearing setting, a public meeting where people can come and review and see what's in it and give their input.
Right.
After that input is brought, the Planning Commission will once again meet with staff and then get together and produce what's called a public hearing draft.
Okay.
At that point, there's a draft that will then be put out for formal public hearing to the Planning Commission. Then, once again, the Planning Commission will review with staff, and the Planning Commission will make final decisions on what it wants to forward as a recommendation to the Town Council. It recommends a plan to the Town Council, who will then hold a public hearing.
Right.
And the public will have the ability to give input again.
Got it. Got it.
And then the Town Council will then take that into account, make its final changes, and adopt a plan.
And then we'll have the updated, revised, comprehensive plan.
Right, and then we'll be back at it 5 years later. But yes, then we'll have it,
Right.
and that will be something that informs the capital improvements program for the town, regulations, initiatives.
Right.
Do we want to build something new as a town? Those are the kind of things that come out of that.
That's fantastic. And as we think about Maple Avenue, this is the big street that is in the middle of town here. There are two large development projects that have been approved, kind of on the west part of the town.
Yep.
And people may drive by them, the corner of Maple Avenue West and Nutley Street, and the other on Pleasant Street and Maple Avenue West. They may drive by there and they may think to themselves, well, what's going on here? I thought that they were going to do X.
Right.
And as time goes on, months go on, and it looks like there's inactivity. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah,
Is
let me
is
give
that
it-
normal? Is that normal or?
I don't know whether it's normal, but so the two projects, one of them, the large empty lot at the corner of Nutley and Maple Avenue West, which some folks refer to as 444 Maple Avenue, was approved for a rezoning by the town council all the way back in 2018.
Oh my goodness.
But then after multiple design, it was finally approved in 2021 by the Board of Architectural Review for its final design. At that point, things were really difficult economically.
Sure, for everyone.
Coming out of the pandemic,
Right.
it feels like ancient history, but if you remember, everybody had problems getting supplies and there were supply
Right.
chain things. The developer was in lots of contact with us talking about how difficult an economic environment was
Sure.
to build.
Sure.
For the last year or so, they have been telling us that they would like to build soon,
Good. Good.
but we don't have any timeline.
Sure.
And so the town doesn't have any power to say you must build.
Right.
But so I'm sure you remember, it's approximately 150 residential unit, multifamily, over retail
Sure.
on the ground level. So that's the status. One of the things that we're most focused on in the near term is working with them to keep the lot looking better visually,
Right.
even while it's vacant.
Right. Right.
And so without going into detail on that, we are using the various tools available to us to get better performance on how they maintain their lot
Sure.
in a better condition, frankly, than it is right now.
Sure.
And so we hope we see improvements in the near future. We're very sensitive to it. The landscaping is maintained better than it was, so that's good. We want better performance. So,
Sure, absolutely.
yes.
So it sounds like
So that's
things
one
are
of the projects.
things are in the works where they want. Yeah. Okay. What about the other?
Yeah, the other one, for those who picture it, it's called Vienna Market. There are townhomes over retail is what was approved. The townhomes are all built, they're occupied.
Right.
The ground level facing Maple Avenue, the retail is not filled. The development project has stalled, has nothing to do with the town.
Right.
They have not completed the internal work. And I will repeat in a sense what I said before, which is that the town is using the various tools at our disposal to ensure that the developer does what they're supposed to do. There are various public infrastructure parts, including on Church Street. Anybody who goes by there will see it right behind the project that have not been completed. And there are other components that are not in as good shape as they should be.
Sure.
We are very aware of that. We are in very constant contact with the developers to get that to the finish line.
Sure.
So
it sounds like bad news, good news. Bad news is we drive by and it's not open yet with commercial. Everyone can see that. But the good news is that it's still active, ongoing.
Yes.
There's things going on behind the scenes, and
Yes.
that's for those folks to handle those situations. And it's in their interest and in the town's interest for them to get going. And so at some point they'll figure it out.
And I just want to assure the town, you and the town, that staff and others very well know the situation, and we feel as uncomfortable with the lack of completion that everybody else does.
Sure.
And so we're on it.
Oh, sure.
And doing what we can to bring it to where it needs to be.
Well, it's exciting that they even have the opportunity to do what they're going to do there. And so whether it's a year or two from now or whenever it might be,
Yeah.
I think once they get going, I think everybody will be happy.
I think so. Yeah.
And so one project the town council envisions for the future is a proposed aquatics and fitness center located at the old Annex site, I think 301 Center Street South. The town bought property over there. It used to be the old former Baptist Church, Faith Baptist Church in 2020. The town bought the property primarily because we were in the process of building a new police station, and we needed a place for the police officers to do their work out of. And so the timing was right. We were able to acquire that property and then move our officers temporarily into that old church.
Right.
So it served us well for those years through about 2023. And so to do anything at the property now, it needs a special permit, some kind of special use permit.
Yeah. So as you know, Mercury, this is very much a multi-departmental effort. So I can talk about the planning and zoning component, but all others as well, because we're working as a team on this. That property, for those who, believe it or not, is zoned what's called RS10.
RS10.
That's a residential zone. So what you're allowed to do is build a single family house on that lot.
Right.
Okay? Without any special permit.
Right.
So that was true when it was a church as well. However, the church was able to get what's called a conditional use permit. Okay, and that's a process where you get a recommendation from the Planning Commission, and the town's Board of Zoning Appeals approves a special use on a project. And that's eligible for certain kinds of uses in the zoning code. Anyone who wants to talk in detail about it, give me a call. So, when the police department used it as their temporary headquarters, they also needed to get a conditional use permit to do that,
Right.
which expired as they were moving out into their new permanent headquarters. If the town moves forward and builds a swim and fitness center, it too, two things are likely to be needed. One, to rezone it from a single family zoning to a parks and recreation zoning. But even so, it's likely to need a conditional use permit because that scale of a facility needs to be assessed on a specific level to assure that the impacts on surrounding neighborhoods are mitigated.
That's the planning part.
That's the planning part, and we work with the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals to make sure of that. There also may need to be some what's called modifications to requirements. So let's say, for example, it can't meet certain requirements in the zoning ordinance. The town would need to actually have the town council approve certain things.
Right.
For example, let's say the design of it means that the building would need to be a little bit closer to Center Street than is normally required. We can't just do that. We have to go through a process to get approval. And the last call on that is the town council. So the process is going to be developing a design, which the planning and zoning department is not going to be in charge of that. Likely the Parks and Recreation department, probably in coordination with all of us, including Public Works, yourself, and all sorts of folks, and the public, honestly, input on that. Once there's a preliminary design that's fully fleshed out, then we'll have a good sense of what the approval process will need to be. Will there need to be modifications that go to the town council?
Right.
Is it a sure thing that it needs a conditional use permit and a rezoning? Answer up ahead, it will. Those last two.
So we've gone from temporary police station to do anything now, it has to have a special permit and all of that. And now the new police station's open, exploring Parks and Rec purposes for the uses of that property. But as you explained, there's a whole lot that goes into, even using that property.
Yeah.
And so I recall the council had the opportunity to look at using it, but there were a lot of structural problems with the facility itself, with the church itself. And to bring it up to code, it was very expensive.
Right.
So there was a vote to kind of start fresh and new, and lo and behold, top of the list was a pool or aquatics and a fitness center. Now this was not something new. Think about 2012 or so. There was another survey done, and aquatics and a pool was top of the list.
Right.
And as I understand, even going back to the 70s, there was another survey and residents wanted aquatics. So we've got some designs that we've shown in some recent council meetings. Actually, I wouldn't say designs, actually it's more like concepts, because we don't have a design team on hand. So just some broad concepts of what it possibly could go on the site. For example, how big could we put an aquatics facility there? How many lanes could fit? Can we park it properly?
Right.
How much use would be in the facility, and how would that impact the surrounding residents and such? So we've done all that, and you were involved in that process. So how does something like the idea of a aquatics and fitness center fit into the comprehensive plan?
Well, the comprehensive plan has two separate chapters that are relevant. One of them is the Parks and Recreation chapter, and another is a Community Facilities chapter.
Sure.
And these go right at it. In the ideal, these big ideas are reflected in your comprehensive plan. In fact, the state requires that when you build a big public facility, that you go through a review to ensure that that is consistent with your comprehensive plan. For those, a parallel project that's going on right now is the new library that's going to be built to replace the Patrick Henry Library. Fairfax County is building that in our town, so the Planning Commission actually is required to review to make sure that a library on that site is consistent with the comprehensive plan. That's going to be an easy one. There's been a library there since I think 1913.
Absolutely. Right.
So it's not an issue there. If you find that it's not consistent with the comp plan, you really should go ahead and update your comprehensive plan if you really want to do it.
Right.
So in any event, something that big, which costs that much money and has such an impact on the community, should be reflected in the long-term vision of the town,
Right.
which the comprehensive plan does. And what that does is it says, okay, you're going to do that. Are you taking into account the traffic? Are you taking into account all the impacts as well as the positive attributes?
Right. And so the council has so far committed to building or moving forward with building an aquatics and fitness center. And now the big question is, so how do we pay for such a facility?
Right.
And so there are a number of ways to do it, but some of those, and many of those ways take us into 2040 with our capital improvement plan. We do a capital improvement plan for those who are watching. Every 2 years, we go to bond. Every year, we update the plan. And in updating the plan, whenever there is a significant drainage issue or a road construction necessary for the town, or water and sewer line repairs, a ball field that doesn't drain quite right, all kinds of issues that people may have on public property. We have our meals tax that supports the cost to improve this infrastructure. The only distinction really is with the water and sewer rates. They cover the cost for the water sewer lines. Other than that, we have grants and stuff from the federal government, state government. But for the most part, the meals tax, like we're here at Foster's Grill right now, and everyone eating here, there's a 3% on every dollar tax that goes to the town that pays for the road. So everyone here is helping the upkeep of the police station and other facilities by 3 cents on the dollar goes towards.
So somebody here with a $20 bill just paid 60 cents to help with our sidewalks and our roads and all that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So one concept that
which I'll go do when we're done here.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. So one concept is to raise the meals tax by 1%. So instead of 3% to 4%, instead of 3 cents on the dollar, 4 cents on the dollar. And doing that little change would enable the town to build an aquatics and fitness center by 2030, 10 years earlier instead of 2040. So maybe talk a little bit about the timeline for construction and permitting and all those kinds of things.
Sure. And I appreciate your asking me about this, but I think you're as usual, our town manager is extra humble because he's been a real leader on this. And I think one of the points that you've always made on this is that the discussion of the increasing the meals tax would be for a limited period.
Yes.
And so potentially it would be for 7, 10 years. And then after this thing is paid for, it would go back down.
Right, absolutely. And that's the important part of this because 2002 to 2008 or so, the town did this before. The town raised the meals tax from 3% to 4% on the dollar to build the town green. As we move about in the town of Vienna, we can't imagine the town green not being here.
Right.
But the council prior to this one, back in the 2000s, had the foresight to say, you know what, we can raise this meals tax, have a sunset provision, and have the money go directly to this town green. And once we have that, then we will move it back down from 4% to 3%.
Right.
Is what the
and
model
the council was good to its word.
Right, absolutely.
They did exactly what they said they would, right?
Right, absolutely. So
I can talk about the timeline.
That would be good. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to pull in different pieces from different departments that have different expertise areas. So the first step would be to be able to move forward is to know that the town has the money to do it. And so the first step which I know you'll be talking about in a couple of minutes, and I will together, is to actually put the money in place through a meals tax increase.
Right.
If not, other mechanisms will have to be explored.
Right.
And maybe it wouldn't be as soon as people want it.
Right.
So once that's in place, then, and as soon as it becomes effective, then extra money can be brought in
Right.
and placed in an account that can be reserved for this purpose. In the meantime, the town needs to get to work on doing an actual design for the building.
Right.
Right now, there are conceptual notions that have been presented and discussed, as you talked about before. But once you get started, you have to hire a design firm, put it in place, get the design. That can take different amounts of time, but let's call it 18 months.
Right.
Let's call it 18 months from your starting date. So let's say we start with that January 1st or 2nd. Let's give folks New Year's Day off. Okay. So let's say it starts January 2nd. Imagine a year and a half, and then you have a final design, which includes going through the various processes that I talked about before. So in parallel to that, we'll be walking through whatever rezoning we need to do, conditional use permit, and I don't want to neglect the role of the Board of Architectural Review in this to make sure that the visually, the exterior design is what the town wants it to be.
Right.
So we'll be walking through that. And at that point, the design will be complete. The meals tax will have been in place for all those 18 months and maybe a little bit longer. And the town will have started to save some money.
Right.
In the meantime, our town manager will be working on potentially other sources of resources that could help to fund it. Assuming that's all in place, the town can then go to bond, means borrow money, with the assurance that there will be this stream of money to pay it back, and fund what looks to be a $20 to $25 million project.
Right.
With that money in hand, the town can, and a design in hand, the town can then put out a request for bids for construction firms
Right.
who can construct the design.
Right. Right.
The town does not, on a regular basis, build these sorts of things, so the town will almost certainly hire a development manager who has expertise, who will report to the town and be our ally in making sure everything's done correctly.
Right.
It's a fiscally prudent thing to do. You spend a little money and you get a lot of gain for that.
Right.
So it's what was done for the police station, and it worked great.
Right.
So then there is construction. So let's assume that there is a 4 to 6 month process of getting a construction firm in place. Then it'll take 2.5, 3 years to do the full construction.
Right.
The site preparation, the actual construction. Little side note, anyone who knows development projects, sometimes it looks like it's done because the external looks great, but there's a whole lot of work going inside that you don't see.
Right.
So it takes months more while it looks to, hey, what's going on out there? No, there's still, you're putting all the internal stuff in place.
Right.
So as you said earlier, that's the sort of timeline that can get you to completion potentially in 2030.
Sure.
And you can you have hopes for perfection. Frequently things don't go exactly as, or you didn't get it quite right. You want the design one more round with the public to give comments, and but so you can anticipate if we start in the beginning of 2025,
Sure.
that it'll take about 5 years. But hey, if the town had an aquatic and fitness center in 5 years in such a central location, that would be fantastic.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
And mostly because the city, that's what the residents said they want.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we've talked about the why. The why is because residents have been saying this for decades. They've been saying they want this. The what is the aquatics and fitness center. And so that part is kind of, in a sense, almost the easy part, because we've been listening, receiving feedback and comment from residents. So we know that this is something that the people in Vienna want. So then we talked about, so it's the how.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the how is through fiscal resources, and sure, we have meals tax that we're planning to build this completely with meals tax, knowing that there are going to be some partners in the community that are going to be interested in participating and coming alongside us to help to fund this. So we actually fiscally build this in a conservative model, knowing that we can do this alone, but we welcome any partners who would love to come and connect with us and help us fiscally.
Yep.
So that's the how. And so the how is tied into a bigger question which is, are the residents of Vienna comfortable
Right.
with raising the meals tax at
Right.
all?
Right.
And so we're going to have a town hall meeting on October 22nd. It's going to be at the Town Hall of Vienna in the council chambers at 6:30. And residents will be able to have an open dialogue with staff. I hope you'll be there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so we will be able to answer questions from residents about the meals tax, about raising it from 3 cents on the dollar to 4 cents on the dollar, about sunsetting it in 10 years, about the capital projects plan itself, what happens to all the other capital projects. Is this going to sideline everything else? It won't. We'll be able to do everything else that we have planned for so far. So the how is important. Mm-hmm. And I think the October 22nd Town Hall will give an opportunity for residents to kind of say, yeah, we do want the pool, but no, we don't want you to raise the meals tax, or yes, we do want you to raise the meals tax.
Yeah.
And that takes us to 2030 or 2040.
Right.
So,
And of course, I mean, the town council wants to make sure we do this the right way.
Right.
They funded a study of what to do on that site.
Right.
And this is 2 years ago.
Right.
And said it should start by asking the residents, what do you want?
Right.
And the residents answered pretty clearly.
Right.
They want a swim and fitness center.
Right. Right.
And so then the council funded, okay, if we're really going to do this, they've been asking for it for decades, let's put our arms around what's the concept. So they funded that in order to also get a sense of what the cost would be.
Right.
So now we have a general sense of what the cost would be. And then the council said, all right, let's explore ways we can finance this.
Right.
And so the meals tax is how we do our capital programs. There's a model on how we did it before through the town green, which you mentioned. So let's not just jump head first. Let's ask the community.
Sure.
You said you wanted it.
Right.
Here's what we're talking about.
Right.
Here's the mechanism that makes the most sense. What do you think?
Right. Right.
And so there will be an informal way of doing it. But I believe on November 18th,
right.
There's also going to be a formal public hearing,
right,
which you have to do anytime you're making a change in the tax rate.
Right, absolutely. And the difference between that public hearing and the town hall will be more of a dialogue.
Right.
We may have a mic in the middle of the room. No one will be sitting at the dais. And residents will be able to come up to the mic, ask questions.
Right.
We may have some information, some handouts or whatever.
Right.
And it's kind of a free-flowing conversation.
Right. Yep.
And then on November 18th is when we'll actually have the public hearing. That is formal.
Yes.
That is official.
Right.
And the council will be sitting at the dais.
Right.
And residents will have 3 minutes to speak.
Yep.
And then that's it. And there's no response from council members. Also, it's important to note that the town hall meeting, business community should attend that as well.
Absolutely.
Because there's certainly impact to them. And I also mentioned too that in the surrounding communities, and even around the Commonwealth of Virginia, most communities that have meals tax, they don't have it designated just for capital projects. So it's important for everyone to know that in Vienna, the 3 cents on the dollar that they spend is going just to capital projects. All the surrounding communities, the mills tax goes to other things to fund the entire budget. We separate that out.
Right.
And I think that's one of the key distinctions. And we also have one of the lowest meals taxes in the area right now.
Okay.
And so to have that 3 cents up to 4, back down to 3 when it's over, and it's just for capital projects, I think is a way that has been successful over the years for Vienna.
Yep.
And that's been our strategy and approach.
And I believe our budget folks just won an award from a national organization, we must be doing something right.
That's right, AAA bond rating, and they keep getting the high awards. So we have some smart people working with us.
Yep. So the October 22nd will be educational and informational.
Yes.
So people can learn about it.
Absolutely.
Give their input, but then they should be hopefully they're sufficiently knowledgeable that when it's public hearing time, if they have something they want to say.
Sure.
And by the way, if you're for it, you can say that too.
That's right.
Some people only come when they're against stuff.
That's true. That's true.
But we like to hear what people are for and when they're against and all, and every shade of gray within it.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because this is not a done deal.
Right.
Right. So, and the reason why we're talking about this now, and like David, you said, over the last 2 years, we've been talking about it, and now we're getting to the point with the town hall. At any point, the council could decide not to do this. And so the biggest dates are November 18th, and that's 7:30, Town Hall. There's a public hearing to raise the mills tax. And then after that, on December 9th, I think it is a final vote on raising the mills tax. So at any point between now and November 18th and December 9th, the council can make a lot of different decisions regarding the Aquatics and Fitness Center and the mills tax. So that's important to know. It's not done until it's done, until we get to December 9th.
So it sounds like there are going to be a lot of opportunities for the community to give input on all sorts of things.
This is true.
For that, for the comprehensive plan. We have other stuff too, but we can't cover everything.
That's true. So, and now that you mentioned the comprehensive plan, we'll kind of come back to that real quickly. Is there anything before we close here, anything that you want to mention about the comprehensive plan that residents should know about before we end our time here?
Well, there's always the question of what you want the community to be 10 to 20 years from now. That's the core question. So when at any point, including now, you can send emails to us, you can send it to the Planning Commission. I encourage everyone to think to themselves, what do I want this community to be 10 to 20 years from now? And tell us, and tell the Planning Commission, and tell the Town Council. It could be transportation, it could be land use, it could be housing, it could be sidewalks, it could be recreation facility, it could be parks, the physical things that make up the town. What do you want it to be? Because it's for you.
Right.
So that's the most important thing for me.
Okay, fantastic. So if anyone wants to contact you about the comprehensive plan,
just send me an email, david.levy@viennava.gov. I'm Director of Planning and Zoning. Again, that's david.levy, Levy, @viennava.gov.
Okay, fantastic. And if anyone has information that they want to share about their thoughts about the public hearing on November 18th at 7:30, they can contact the town clerk's office, 703-255-6304, 703-255-6304, and also can email the council at council@viennava.gov. Let the council know what your thoughts are, if you're supportive or not, and everything in between. And I'm sure that the council will take every comment and thought and idea into consideration. So that's our time for today. Thank you for taking time to hear what we have to share about the comprehensive plan and the Aquatics and Fitness Center. I hope everyone enjoys this fall weather and look forward to seeing you next time on Deck with Mercury. Thank you very much.